Saturday it is, the 17th day in the month of September 2016. Let us say good morning to Mr. Brereton Horne. How are you, sir?
Good morning to you, Randy Duffwell. I am good. How are you?
Life is good. Life is good. Saturday it is, the 17th day in the month of September 2016. Let us say good morning to Mr. Brereton Horne. How are you, sir?
Good morning to you, Randy Duffwell. I am good. How are you?
Life is good. Life is good. Been a good week. Met some great friends. Had some good conversations. Been a good week.
Pretty good. It's always good to hear that. Let me say good morning to you and to all of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, both at home and listeners wherever they are. Listeners to Nice Radio, that is, wherever they are. Randy, it's always good to be communicating with you, and I feel especially so this morning. The time in London is 12:31 in the afternoon. So when I say good morning to you on various occasions, I'm really saying it's afternoon in London. So I hope our listeners bear that in mind. As far as the weather is concerned, it is heavily overcast. In fact, it's almost murky, and the temperature has dropped dramatically from Tuesday of this week, when the temperature was 34.4 degrees Celsius, which is about 94 degrees Fahrenheit. It was the hottest September day for over 100 years. Well, today is far removed from that. The temperature is 16 degrees Celsius, which is approximately 61 degrees Fahrenheit. In fact, it feels quite a lot cooler. And I think that's the sign that winter is fast approaching. On a view from the outside this week, we look at the issue of humiliation, with the view being that those who hold the reins of power in St. Vincent and the Grenadines appear to use humiliation as a means to oppress, repress, and subjugate some of its citizens, especially when they perceive that such citizens do not toe their line or chime in their chorus. This humiliation is meted out across the board, from the professionals right down to the watchmen and the road cleaners. And sadly, while this is the case for the purported transgressors, the ones who are in favor or seen in favor and chime in the chorus are awarded, in some cases, by being promoted when they commit misdemeanors against the state. Nelson Mandela, in his book Long Walk to Freedom in 1994, said, "I learned that to humiliate another person is to make him suffer an unnecessarily cruel fate." When we look at the examples, one could put that into context. Now, Nelson Mandela himself, as everyone knows, was humiliated in the worst way by the oppressive and repressive apartheid regime in South Africa. He was imprisoned for 27 years, all because he stood up for democracy and the human rights of his own people. So when it comes to humiliation, Nelson Mandela knew what he was talking about. Yes, remember he said, to humiliate another person is to make him suffer an unnecessarily cruel fate. Now, the Oxford Dictionary defines humiliation as making someone feel ashamed and foolish by injuring their dignity and pride. And the Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines humiliation as reducing someone to a lower position in one's eyes or others' eyes. We need to bear those definitions in mind as we go on. And I ask the readers to apply those definitions in their everyday life and see who is humiliated. Well, there are many examples of humiliation being used as a victimizing and silencing technique by those who are at the helm of power in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We cannot mention all of the examples, of course, but we will highlight some of them here. Now, there's a guy from Fireburn, Mount Grinnan area called Manny Macmillan. He was fired from his job as a watchman because he had the courage to speak out against injustice and what he called the biasness of those who hold the reins of power. He was fired from his job over 8 years ago now, or thereabout. and he continues to be humiliated. Everyone remembers the case of Michelle Andrews. This is the female police officer who was part of the Prime Minister's security team and who accused the Prime Minister of raping her in the early hours of the 3rd of January 2008. That's the early morning hours of the 3rd of January 2008, while she was on duty guarding him. She was humiliated by being named at a press conference by the Prime Minister himself. She was further humiliated when she was placed to work on the beat and where people from the public met and ridiculed her while she was carrying out her duties to protect and to serve us all. She was further humiliated publicly when what became known as a rape rally was carried out in support of the alleged perpetrator or the alleged rapist. Her humiliation went unnoted when the Director of Public Prosecutions, the DPP, threw out the case in what everyone now knows as nolliprus, and it never saw the light of day in court. Her humiliation continues up to today. Otto Sam was instrumental in helping those same people into government generally, and particularly in winning the South Central Windward constituency. He, Otto Sam, later dared to show some independence and refused to cower in the face of tyranny. And as a result, he was transferred from his job as a head teacher after he had been a teacher all of his working life. And he was placed in a department seemingly to twiddle his thumbs where he had no experience at all. He was later fired from that post for daring to speak out about the unpreparedness of the department, NEMO, which is responsible for disaster preparedness and the safety of citizens of the nation in the event of disasters, natural or otherwise. Otto Sam was humiliated, and he continues to languish in the face of such humiliation. The three teachers, Kenroy Johnson, Elvis Daniel, and Addison Bash Thomas, they were forced to resign from their jobs in order to contest the elections for the opposition. And they too suffered the humiliation of not being re-employed to their post or re-employed by the government at all. It must be remembered that the government reneged on a clause in the collective agreement when they promised to re-employ any such teacher to his post. Those three teachers, Kenroy Johnson, Elvis Daniel, and Addison Bass Thomas, continue to languish in humiliation. The big story has been well chronicled. The nation knows about it, the region knows about it, and the world knows about it too. Simply because he was perceived to be sympathetic to the opposition, his multi-million-dollar business was shut down by using what he described as trumped-up reasons. And his 60-plus workers were made unemployed as a result. He became unable to send his children to school. He became unable to feed his family properly. He was literally made to beg for a living. Now that is humiliation. They have since admitted that the reasons they gave for shutting down his business cannot stand. But to date, he has had no compensation from them. And the ruined site with equipment worth millions of dollars is there for all to see. And Joshua at the Cobblestone Inn is given an unreasonably short time to relinquish the tenancy which she has held for over 30 years. Now it is worth remembering that hers is a business, it's a hotel for which she has no doubt advanced bookings. It is said that the real reason behind asking her to vacate the premises is because the powers that be perceive her to be sympathetic to the protesters on the front line in Kingstown. These protesters, led by human rights and social activist Lizette King, who herself is derided and humiliated on a daily basis, have been protesting daily against the supervisor of elections for the results of the general elections which were held on December 9th, 2015. It is widely believed that there were major irregularities during these elections for which the opposition currently has election petitions in the court. And Joshua and her many employees wait uncertainly for the matter to be resolved. They wait in humiliation for the next step. One member of the front line, our sister, our neighbor, our relative, our family, our friend, his constituent was singled out by the Prime Minister in Parliament for public humiliation. He made fun of her being indigent and poor and cannot buy food or pay for transportation to go to the front line. Now that is humiliation in the worst ways. And then we come to Sergeant Brenton Smith. Sergeant Smith appears to be the latest in the long line of persons to be targeted for humiliation. His transgression appears to be that he wrote an article dated the 7th of September 2016 in which he praised Lizette King. This article is entitled Tribute to Lizette King and is available on the internet for those who have not yet read it and who are interested in reading it. Sergeant Smith ended the article by saying, in reference to Lizette King, that, I quote him, "This strong Vincentian icon refuses to surrender, even when the tide seems rough and there is nowhere or anyone to turn to. She brought awareness and a sense of fresh air for many of the political issues that were swept under the carpet. Thank you to our Vincentian Rosa Parks," unquote. Following that article, Sergeant Smith suffered the humiliation of being removed as the station sergeant, being in charge of the Port Elizabeth police station in Beckway. He was transferred to the beat in Kingstown. His is a developing story, and one which we all as Vincentians must not sit back and allow anyone to humiliate him any further. We owe him our vigilance. Let us not forsake him. In fact, Vincentians, the time has come for vigilance by all. You know of all those around you who suffer the indignity of being humiliated on a daily basis. Some of them cannot hold their heads high. You owe it to them to speak up and oppose such treatment. You owe it to your neighbor to protect them from humiliation. You owe it to your sons and daughters to protect them from humiliation. The country cannot sustain any more of this. Vincentians, this humiliation must stop. It must. And we end with the words of Eli Wiesel, a writer, a professor, a political activist, and a Nobel laureate. He was the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize. He was in fact a survivor of the Holocaust, when Adolf Hitler persecuted, humiliated, and killed many millions of Jews. Let us have his words, these words, ringing in our ears on a daily basis. In accepting his Nobel Peace Prize, he said, I quote him, "I swore never to be silent whenever, wherever human beings endure suffering and humiliation. We must take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. Sometimes we must interfere," unquote. Vincentians, the time has come to interfere. Until next week, Randy, this is Brereton Horne with a view from the outside. And with a reminder to our listeners to send feedback as usual to aviewfromtheoutside@hotmail.com. That's aviewfromtheoutside@hotmail.com. Thank you very much, and from a cool, cold London, have a pleasant weekend.